So good afternoon. My name is Scott Hicks. I'm Director of the Teaching and Learning Center at UNC Pembroke. I'm here today with Board of Governors award-winning teachers from UNC Pembroke over the last few years. We're glad that you're here. The session is being recorded so that it can be shared later. So this roundtable conversation seeks to celebrate the accomplishments of our colleagues who have won the highest honor for excellence in teaching in higher education in North Carolina. During this conversation, Professors Michele Fazio and Holden Hansen of the Department of English, Theater, and Foreign Languages, and Kevin Freeman of the Department of Political Science and Public Administration will share experiences that have shaped their careers, perspectives that guide their teaching, strategies for success in the classroom, and advice for you, their colleagues. So during our session, I'll ask a few questions. If you have any questions or comments for the panelists, please put them in the chat or unmute yourselves after the conversation when we open the floor for Q&A. But again, Michele, Holden, and Kevin, thank you for being here. We're thrilled for this conversation. My first question is this: what do you see as your greatest success or impact as a teacher?
Who wants to start? Y'all go ahead.
I'll start. I am really proud of my efforts to promote migrant farm worker justice on campus. Service learning has really changed my teaching. I didn't expect to be teaching service learning. It wasn't something that I learned as an undergrad. I didn't have that experience. So coming here, it was something I just ran to and involved my students with. So I worked with my colleague, Dr. Brooke Kelly, from the sociology department, and we created a new course in the honors college, and we promoted National Farm Worker Awareness Week, and that really changed the kind of community engagement and student engagement that opened up our students' experiences working with nonprofit organizations. We brought migrant farm worker children to campus to see what college is all about. So to see our students in action like that, real learning taking place, applying what they're learning in textbooks and in the classroom to really improving people from vulnerable communities. We even visited a migrant labor camp, and that really opened our students' eyes as well as ours. Like what we teach matters. So it was such a proud moment to see our students engaging with migrant farm workers, and then showing their research at the PERC Symposium and at other conferences to show the kind of work that we do here at UNCP.
It's a lot more amorphous for me, if I may. I mean, for me, it's more of just seeing that light bulb click on students. I mean, getting students to believe in themselves, and at a regional university like we are, as all of us well know, I mean, we get a lot of first generation students, a lot of people who don't necessarily understand what the college experience is like. A lot of students have doubts of their own abilities. Maybe they weren't necessarily as prepared in secondary school as they would hope. But when you hit that moment where you see them finally get it, and when you see students understand, and you can see it on their faces when they understand what they're doing, what they're learning, how they can apply this to real world things, and you know that this is going to get them to move on to better things, whether it's graduate school or getting a good internship or going to law school or just landing that job that's in their specialty, in their profession. I get a lot of personal satisfaction from that. So that's the thing that keeps me moving.
I started teaching at UNCP in '97, and I struggled in the classroom mightily that first semester. But when I was able to direct plays, somehow I always felt really successful. There's something about making something with the students. There's something kind of improvisational about it. I was able to be more relaxed and myself. And then as I continued to journey through my experiences in the classroom, there were two things that I think really helped me become more successful in the classroom, and that was related to technology. I forced myself to learn how to use Blackboard, and then later Canvas, and then the next sort of benchmark for me was just this past year when I went fully online. And I don't know if my students would agree with this, but I think that my online courses are so much improved over what I was doing face to face. I feel that I'm able to assess them more consistently each day through the week than I ever felt I was able to do in the classroom. So I guess those are my 3 measures of success.
Thank you. Each of you speak about teaching as being really high impact, or that you're really working hard to engage your students and to sort of understand them so that you can assess them, or to be able to help them, inspire them toward their careers, or to engage them in other high impact forms of teaching like service learning. So given how much effort that a faculty member can put into teaching, how do you balance research, creative scholarship, creative performance, and service in higher education with your teaching? Or what might you say is the ideal balance of teaching with research, creative performance, and service in higher education today?
I can start this one if that's all right. It depends in a grand scheme of things. I mean, there are research universities, there are teaching universities, there are hybrid universities, and I'm just going to speak for myself here. I mean, given the fact that we are at a teaching institution where the predominant expectation is teaching, I prioritize that over the other two. I'm pretty confident that both Holden and Michele have a better publication record than I do. And that's a part of the job, of course. But here at a university like this, where practicing is so important, and we're teaching students the basics and the fundamentals of how to be a good person and how to be a global citizen. I mean, that sort of stuff is the kind of thing that takes priority for me. We live in a region, a depressed region for the most part, where a lot of folks, many of them have not left the state, much less the county. And so I see it as our job and as our duty to turn these students into something that gives them the capabilities to see beyond their borders. And so that's where the service part of the equation comes into play as well. I mean, most of the service stuff that I do, or at least a significant portion of it, is to get people thinking beyond the water's edge, if I could coin a political science phrase here, to think about other cultures and other peoples and other ideals, and other lifestyle choices and things like that, so that they can broaden their horizons and become a better person, but can contribute in a positive way towards the global community. I know that sounds kind of sappy, but that's what I get out of it. And my research kind of floats around those lines as well.
I do not have a publication record that rivals yours, Kevin. I can guarantee you that. I've done.
I don't know. We'll have to compare notes.
my scholarship has always been related to making plays and not publishing. So it's not the traditional publication. And being involved with my students in making plays, I think is probably the most valuable kind of scholarship you can do. And in fact, I've spent a lot of time on the promotion and tenure committee lately, and I most admired the teachers who are able to involve their students in scholarship activities. I'm not so sure how important publication is to students unless you can somehow get them connected to it. So I think both service and scholarship, anytime you can get students involved in it directly, that's probably the most valuable thing. I think that teaching is way more important than scholarship and service, especially at this university.
So I agree with the both of you, but I also feel like we can integrate the three. I feel like the only way I can answer this question, Scott, is by saying that they're equally part of who I am as a teacher and what I do in the classroom and what I do professionally. So for example, I teach working class studies. So my work is rooted in activism and social justice. And the kinds of committee work that I do on campus is based on diversity and social justice and student engagement. And then research, I do publish, Kevin. No, just say so, but I involve my students with those publications. So for example, I have a student who is part of the Mellon Reach program on campus, and she came out of my honors class and did the service learning project and with the migrant farm workers. And now she is writing her, creating her own research on migrant farm workers during COVID and developing an online exhibit that is rooted in research, archival research, activism. She's, it's going to be serving communities for years to come. It's going to be live online. And I see that as a way to integrate service, teaching, and research. And mentoring, I think, is a way that brings it all together. Plus, I like to be involved, really involved with my students. So I bring them to conferences, and I think what they say matters.
I suspect all of us fall into that category. I mean, between my study abroad and Model United Nations and Holden doing involving students in plays, yeah, that's a common theme, I think, for all three of us.
So really maybe the question here is that how do you help students do all three things in a way? Your teaching is helping you do all three things, and it seems like what you're saying is that you're engaging your students in the process of teaching, but doing research as well as doing performance, as well as doing service to the community. So in a way, you're making your students into the well-rounded, impactful, engaging faculty that you are. I like this conversation. I like how you're seeing things come together.
Well, actually, the three of us, what I'm hearing and what I know about my colleagues, we are involved with our students. And so we're right. I've seen Kevin in action. So we're leading by example. And I think that really is at the heart of what we're all doing here, to be that involved with our students.
And between Model United Nations, for example, for Kevin, and for the plays that take place at GPAC, our students are actually, in a way, making public what it is they're learning in our classes. So I think that as you're thinking about your own role as teachers, you're seeing your students perform those roles as they contribute back, through what they've learned from you, through performance or through Model UN or through service learning.
Speaking of Model UN, I still see that I'm listed as UNCP China/UAE. It's left over from the last Model UN conference. Sorry about that.
I thought maybe this panel had, global reach, but I guess you're still sitting in your living room in North Carolina, right?
That's correct. Yeah.
So my next question is, what's been the most challenging moment you've experienced in the classroom, and how did you overcome it, or how did you resolve it?
I guess I'll start this one. I can think of a lot of challenging moments, but I choose to sort of reflect on the biggest challenges as opposed to moments. The biggest challenge that I had through my career was really related to feeling enormous anxiety in the classroom. When I started, I just wanted everything to be tightly scripted. I can remember sitting at my GPAC desk. I started out as the director of GPAC, and I was a half-time lecturer. And I recall writing scripts that I thought I was just going to take into the classroom, and it really ended up being quite unsuccessful. At least it didn't feel very good. And again, I think this transition that I made about 10 years ago, with technology and using Blackboard and starting to use PowerPoint and trying to streamline my notes so that I didn't feel so tied to them, enabled me to improvise, to make it feel more like a rehearsal, and working with the kids on the shows, and just sort of enabled me to free up and talk about what I know. and be myself more. And I think once I was able to make that transition, I think I became a lot more effective.
No, I'll add to that, Holden. I don't think it's a moment as much as it's always a challenge in the classroom. I teach about white supremacy and white privilege and oppression in all its forms. And it is hard because there is no script and life is unfolding every day. Unfortunately, these events keep happening that then enter into the conversation that we're having in the classroom. So it's challenging because I want my students to think critically, but I also have to make myself extremely vulnerable, like I'm asking them to be. And there's no roadmap on where we're going to end up by the end of the session or the semester. So it's uncomfortable. And I think that's a challenge, how to navigate that space, but that we have to have these kinds of conversations with our students because they're living it. You know, and I find they want to talk about Black Lives Matter, and they want to talk about Indigenous rights. They want to talk about class injustice. And it's not to get them to think a certain way, but just to think critically about why they feel that way or why they have that value. And that connects so much to our mission. And, you know, whenever it gets a little uncomfortable, you know, I just reiterate, let's think about our mission and let's think about us as learners, that we are here to listen and reflect, that we don't always have to react or know all the answers. And that's hard to do because, like you, Holden, I had the script and I'm like, I'm an English professor, I'm going to teach American literature. And then suddenly it's like, yeah, you have to have those spaces open, or the opportunity for those spaces to be created in the conversation, because it can't just be, this is the agenda for today, and not acknowledge what's happening to our students and the rest of the world.
On here. I'll be a little more specific and be fully above board here. The last year has been very hard for me. The COVID has really changed the definition of how a lot of us do our jobs. I've had to convert a lot of my stuff to online, as Holden has talked about, and I'm a classroom person. I mean, my environment, my comfort zone is in that classroom in front of a group of students, telling them about stories of the world, talking about the latest election, whatever it happens to be. And you have to utilize flexibility quite a bit in order to continue to do your job the way that you expect it of yourself and the way that students expect it from you in a hybrid environment where not only are you having to use Canvas more and do WebEx simultaneous or record your lectures and do online grading, that sort of things, but you have to be flexible with the students as well, because they're coming and going and they're getting sick and they're having to go home and take care of their families or other things like that. So it's a real challenge to I don't know how to say this the best way, but to kind of stay on point and to keep focused and to make sure that things are going in a way that you want them to, while at the same time keeping that flexible stuff in the back of your head. And so it's and I'm sure I'm not alone in speaking about this. A lot of us have had to be very adaptable over the last year, and it's challenged a lot of us to close to our limits perhaps, but I think we're all going to be better for this when it ultimately pans itself out, I hope.
I think it's been tough trying to stay on point when the entire world around us seems to be changing or falling apart or in chaos. And I know that as we sort of direct Canvas and lectures online, in person, half online, and all the different ways we've had to meet so many different students' needs, it's not been easy this year. So, and I think that we'll learn a lot, like you say, but I also think we can process what we felt and sort of lean into that too. So thanks for bringing that up. So my final question for the group is this: what have you learned about teaching thanks to your time at UNCP? So how does being at UNCP make you unique, do you think, as an instructor? And what's the most important piece of advice that you would share with our listeners, your colleagues here on campus?
Back to you, Dr. Fazio, I believe.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. I just want to say from the beginning, I am so grateful for the collegial and administrative support I've had to develop the kinds of teaching that I'm doing. I think if I was at a larger school or a research one, I don't know that I would be able to do service learning and study abroad the way that I do. And I've heard that at conference presentations. People have said, how did you get to go to a migrant labor camp? I'm like, well, I did. We had liability issues, but we worked them out. But my campus and the Office of Community and Civic Engagement was really there for me. And I hear a lot of bureaucracy from other people that they can't surmount that on their campuses. So I just want to say I'm really grateful for those opportunities. I would say that what I've learned over the years is to be flexible and to take risks. To go back to that comment earlier about not having a script, like when I started doing service learning, I had no idea what the outcome was going to be. One example that comes to mind is when I did the oral histories of the Lumbee tribe. I had no idea what it was going to be bringing my students off campus. And there was a lot of discomfort in leaving the security of the classroom. But I thought we had to experience this to understand who the community is that surrounds our campus. And so there were risks. I had to learn to be flexible and to convince my students that we might not know where we're ending up, but the journey is part of the learning process. And I was convincing myself of that at the same time. So I think that kind of being less structured to let the real learning take place is something that comes with experience. Leaving grad school, I had an idea of what I would be doing, and they didn't teach me this in grad school for sure, like all these opportunities. And that dovetails nicely to the advice I would give. I would tell other people to reach beyond their department and their discipline, because I'm looking at my colleague, Kevin. We did a study abroad in Tokyo. We studied comic books and manga. And I think this came out of, I'm trying to remember when I met you, but I think it was the diversity committee. And we started to have some conversations. And then suddenly, like, we should develop a study abroad class to Tokyo. So if I hadn't thought about interdisciplinary work in that way, that might not have happened. So that's one piece of advice. And the other one is don't be afraid to involve your students with your research and service. When I have students, many students serve on the social justice committee. And I think that shows the kind of work that many of us are doing in the classroom and how student voices matter on campus, and that they could have a role in shaping how we move forward. So that's my advice. Be involved, involve our students.
And I'll speak on behalf of the faculty here at UNCP in particular. There's a lot of good teachers at this university, and you don't necessarily see that until you are able to draw a comparison. And there's a lot of us who have taught at other universities. We've given presentations, we've traveled, we've done this and that with other faculty and other students all over the place, and they're just amazed at how engaging a lot of us from this regional university in North Carolina are in the classroom, and how much we care about our students. And I would put the teaching skills of anybody at this university against people at some of these big prestigious R1s, the Harvards and the Stanfords of the world. I think we could hold our own and probably do better than a lot of those folks in the classroom. And it's fulfilling when you see your students succeeding so well. I'll toot my own horn if I can for a second here. The last 5 SGA presidents in a row, the last 5 have all been Model UN delegates, have done Model UN. And I guarantee they take the skills that they learn in that program, public speaking and writing and parliamentary procedure, and they apply that to student government, and they want to get involved. They want to do stuff. They want to publicly engage the student body or the local community. And my advice would be this, and my advice is to teachers and faculty anywhere, it's never forget the original reason that got you into this job in the first place. Most of us love what we do. We love teaching. And it's very easy for us as faculty to get caught up in administrative stuff and paperwork and stuck in bureaucracy and doing committee work and all these other things that kind of detract or take away from what we can do in the classroom. But just remember why we're here. We're here to improve the quality of life for the people that we are serving in this community and at any institution that we happen to be, whether it's a kindergarten or higher education or anywhere in between. We're good at what we do. We are making a difference. And I mean, that's kudos to everybody who it's a calling, just like anything else, in my opinion. And so kudos to everybody who does this, because it ain't easy.
Yeah, I didn't get any formal training as a teacher, and I think that everything I've learned by doing, trial and error. I think I had to learn to not beat myself up. I had to learn that it's not all about me. And I think I had to learn what the mission is here, really. I'm not so sure that it's so much having them walk out with a certain set of or pieces of knowledge about a given topic. It's really about training them to learn how to think. I think maybe maybe I should go back to the greatest successes again, but you know, when I'm in my acting classes, I feel great whenever I hear a student say that they've walked out of the class with more confidence, and that's a kind of a real world thing. So, and if I was to give advice, I'm not sure that I'm like qualified to do that, but if I was to give advice to faculty, I would say, be responsive, answer your emails, don't cancel class, hold your students accountable. I'm sometimes appalled when I hear stories about faculty who don't bother to answer their emails. I mean, these are just ways to make connections with the students outside of the classroom. If you're not answering your emails, what kind of an impression does that leave with them? So I suppose that's kind of pedantic, but that's my advice.
Great advice. And thank you everyone for sharing the advice that you had. It's been a wonderful conversation. I want to thank our panelists for being here today. Michele Fazio from Department of English, Theater, and Foreign Languages, Holden Hansen, also from English, Theater, and Foreign Languages, and Kevin Freeman from Political Science and Public Administration. We are thrilled that you have joined us today. We congratulate you on being recognized by the UNC system as one of the best faculty in the University of North Carolina across the state. And we're just thankful that you're here today to share with us your ideas. So thanks again. Thanks again for watching, and have a great day. Bye-bye.